I'm delighted to be in Mayer Brown's beautiful Paris office today, where I'm joined by Julien Haure. And you're an employment specialist here in the Paris office. And I do appreciate you're not an economist, but if I may, I'm going to open with quite a general question, which is, in the current economic environment, which obviously is challenging around the world, what are the general views and what are people talking about here in France?
First of all, I'm delighted to be here with you, Amy. And you're right, I'm not an economist. I'm just a simple lawyer, but also a citizen. And as everyone, I'm very concerned by the changes that we currently experiencing. We have the COVID-19. It's still there, even though it's dormant here in France, but I think it's still there in Asia, notably. We have the climate changes that force us to reset our life mode, and we have now the war in Ukraine. So, which on top of the human disaster is also an economic disaster for us. So, we are facing a legion of challenges, and I think that law and regulation is one tool to adapt to this challenge.
And now coming onto your actual specialism, what are the common employment issues that you think will occur?
The current environment, the economic environment, has very strong consequences on the employment issues here in France, and very deep consequences. For instance, COVID-19 changed a lot how we work. The traditional way to work, to be present at the office, is no longer the tendency. And all of our clients call us to implement flexible or remote working policies. And how do you do business as well? I think that before, maybe the business was driven by profitability only. Now you have to take into account sustainability, environmental concerns, governance concerns, and so on. So this has a real deep consequences on the employment, and it will keep going, I think, with all the changes that will come.
And how can clients then support employees during this period of time?
For the businesses that can afford this, they can raise their salaries, because you know that the Ukraine war has huge impact on the purchasing power of the employees, but not all of them could do that. So the French government has recently enacted 2 laws in August 16 to mitigate the adverse effect of the crisis, the Ukraine crisis, on the purchasing power of the employees. So now, for instance, you can pay a premium, what we call a profit-sharing premium, to the employee that will be tax-free. Social Security contributions free as well. You can buy back some days off, for instance. All the other time that you would work would be tax-free as well. So there are these kind of measures that have been implemented by the government to mitigate the impact on the salary.
And if businesses are looking to restructure, and maybe as part of that you have redundancies and the like, what sort of things should clients be thinking about in how they deal with the employees through those sort of processes?
If we talk about processes, redundancy processes or reorganization processes in France is a long story. I try to make it short. You have several procedures in France, and it really depends on several criteria. The head count of the company. If you are less than 50 employees, 50 is a critical number in France. If you have 50 employees, normally you should have a works council, which is an employee representative body that you have to consult. It depends as well on the number of employees that you need that will be impacted by the reorganization. So these kind of things, you can have a very simple procedure, which is basically to meet the employee and to notify the decision, and you can have very lengthy, complex, and burdensome procedures. You have to go before the labor authorities and so on, and it costs a lot to the company. So it really depends on the situation.
And what do you see as common mistakes or pitfalls that people tend to make in these sort of situations?
So many, Amy, so many in France. In terms of pitfalls, there are two that come up in my mind. In terms of timing, most of the time, the client do not anticipate how the timing can be long in France, what the constraints are in terms of procedure and so on. So this can impact the timing for the completion of the project. And you can have, some tension between the top management that want the project that be completed very quickly, and all the steps that you have to go through to do it in France. In terms of cost as well, it could be a pitfall because most of the time when you make a cost estimate for your client, you can forget to impact the social charges, which is very high in France, 50% of what you are paying. So all these kind of things can create some tensions. And yes, one of the main error, because I'm thinking about something, one of the main error we can see with foreigner clients is that their global communication or decision may impact locally. In France, for instance, if you want to reorganize and you, for instance, put certain employee on the restructuring cost center, this could be used by the employee in France to say, look, they have already dismissed me while the procedure was not done. And these kind of things could be
that's very interesting.
detrimental.
So how do clients protect themselves then from these pitfalls?
They're calling us.
Good answer.
No, but I'm serious. When I say us, it's not only Mayor Brown, even though I would like to, but it's, I think, any advisor that on top of his deep knowledge or her depth knowledge of the law has the experience of this kind of situation. And as well as a pragmatic approach to find solutions, because it is quite easy to identify the barriers for doing something, but you have as a counsel to find the solutions for your client. So calling us.
And an issue I've read quite a bit about in the press is something called quiet quitting, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that is when an employee basically does as little as possible to sort of comply, meet the bare minimum requirements. And I guess maybe in the current uncertain environment, people sit tight because they're nervous about moving. But what can you do as an employer if you're faced with those sort of issues?
I think that you have to do what you are doing, what you should do normally. It means monitor and monitor your employees, their investment. It means that you need some good relays or fluid communication between your management, your middle management, and the top management to identify who is doing the quiet quitting. And if you identify someone, you could even warn him or her, put her or him under a PIP, what is a performance improvement plan, and dismiss the employee if really is not doing properly his duties.
And if you have the situation, because of course lots of businesses are under enormous pressure in the current economic climate in all sorts of places in the world, but what do you do then if you can't give inflation level pay rises to your employees? How do you go about motivating them?
People now, employees in France, at least in France, but I think it should be the same in other countries, are keen to have a peaceful environment of work, want to have a good work-life balance, to have the feeling to belong to a company. So you can do team building, you can implement flexible working time policies, things like this to provide the employee the feeling that it is a good for him a good environment to work. If you don't, and what another thing that you can do is maybe commit or enter into an agreement with the unions to say when the situation will be better, we commit to raise the salary, or at least to meet you and negotiate on the raise of salary.
And if you have a situation where sadly businesses again, may fail, or there's a demerger or a merger or whatever it is, but changes in the structure, what are the employees' rights in those situations?
You have minimum payments to pay them. So again, you have a procedure to respect. If you dismiss them, you have to pay them minimum amounts. It could be huge amounts if, for instance, you have more than 50 employees and 10 employees impacted by the reorganization. So you have to do that. And generally what happens is that the employer implements some outplacement, redeployment measures, some aids to create your own business and so on. So you have all these set of measures too.
And just finally, Julien, can you, from your perspective, just let me know what your key takeaways would be for any of our clients who are watching this today?
As I said, taking advice, anticipate things. I think it's very important that the client ask his advisor what is the best, worst, and reasonable scenario, both in terms of timing, cost, and even reputational, exposure for him. So really, take advice, anticipate things, and you can call us again. We will take care.